We're going to stop the invasion of our borders. We're going to reclaim our wealth. We're going to unlock the liquid gold that's right under our feet, liquid gold. And very soon we'll begin the largest deportation operation in American history.
You heard US President Donald Trump. Ahead of his swearing-in ceremony on Monday, Trump addressed a large crowd at a MAGA rally in Washington. MAGA is the acronym of the slogan, Make America Great Again. And if you heard Trump carefully, what did he say? Trump says he is going to launch the largest deportation operation in US history. Does this mean that the US will now expel millions of immigrants from the country? Hello and welcome to Connecting the Dots. I'm Unman Bhattacharya. Let's connect the dots of the possible impact of the new US immigration policy on H-1B visa holders, especially Indian techies.
Please raise your right hand and repeat after me. I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear.
I, Donald John Trump, do solemnly swear
that I will faithfully execute the office of President of the United States.
The office of President of the United States.
Donald Trump was sworn in as the 47th President of the United States on Monday. Trump's plans to deport immigrants have caused widespread concern among those who could be removed from the country. Indians are the second largest immigrant group in the US after Mexicans, accounting for 6% of all US immigrants. As the Trump 2.0 era begins, apprehensions among H-1B visa holders go high. Many fear a return to stricter regulations on foreign workers, a hallmark of Trump's previous administration. During his earlier term, Trump implemented policies that prioritized American workers over foreign talent. Just days before Trump's inauguration, the US Department of Homeland Security has implemented new H-1B visa rules, which came into effect on the 17th of January 2025. Let's first understand what is the H-1B visa program. The H-1B is a non-immigrant visa program. The program allows American companies to temporarily hire foreign workers in specialty occupations. The job offered must meet the criteria for a specialty occupation requiring specialized knowledge. This typically means a bachelor's degree or higher in a specific field. The common fields include information technology, engineering, finance, science, medicine, and academia. A US employer must sponsor the foreign worker and file the necessary petitions with US Citizenship and Immigration Services. The employer must demonstrate that they could not find a qualified US worker for the position. There is an annual cap on the number of H-1B visas issued each fiscal year. The current annual cap is 65,000 visas, with an additional 20,000 visas reserved for foreign professionals with a US master's degree or doctorate. The H-1B visa allows a person to stay in the US for 6 years. It is initially granted for 3 years and can be extended by another 3 years. If these visa holders lose their jobs, they might have to leave the US within 60 days unless they find new employment or change their visa status. H-1B workers can have dual intent, meaning they can simultaneously pursue permanent residency, which is known as a green card, while on the H-1B visa. India is the largest beneficiary of H-1B visas, accounting for over 72% of all H-1B visas issued. As a result, Indian techies make up a large part of the US tech industry and hold key positions at companies like Apple, Microsoft, and Google. China comes second in terms of H-1B visas' total share. Chinese citizens typically receive around 12 to 13% of the total H-1B visas. Other countries that benefit from the H-1B visa program include Canada, South Korea, and the Philippines. Reports say Indian tech companies like Tata Consultancy Services, Infosys, and others have been major beneficiaries of the H-1B visa program. But things have been changing. These companies are now hiring more Americans. For example, HCL Tech says 80% of its US workers are local hires. Wipro is doing the same. US Citizenship and Immigration Services data indicates a decline in H-1B visa sponsorship in 2024. Even big companies like Amazon, the largest sponsor of H-1B visas, got fewer approvals. Now, with Donald Trump taking office, some big changes to the H-1B visa program are being considered. Trump's plan to redefine specialty occupation may limit H-1B visa opportunities for certain jobs that don't have strict degree requirements, making it harder for companies to hire foreign workers for those roles. Another proposal is to double the minimum salary for H-1B workers from $60,000 to $120,000 a year. This could make it difficult for companies to hire people for mid-level positions. These changes are not just about H-1B visas. International students who use the optional practical training or OPT program after graduation could also be affected. The OPT program allows students to work in the US temporarily. One proposed change could stop the 2-year extension for students in STEM fields. STEM is an acronym for science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. It might also become harder for them to work at third-party work sites. Even getting a green card could become more difficult. There might be new rules that could stop some green card applications from being processed. These changes could also affect families of visa holders. Spouses of H-1B workers who often have their own work permits called H-4 visas might lose their ability to work. There are also proposals for more workplace inspections, stricter rules for employers, and longer wait times for all types of visas. These changes could discourage companies from hiring foreign workers. On top of all this, a US Senator, Bernie Sanders, has suggested even tougher rules for H-1B visas. He wants to double the application fees and increase the minimum salary. He says this would stop companies from replacing American workers with lower-paid foreign workers. All these changes could make it much harder for Indian tech professionals to work in the US. Now let's talk about becoming a US citizen. In 2024, Indians were the second largest group to become US citizens or get green cards. Official numbers show that 6% of all new US citizens were originally from India. Mexico had the highest number at 13%. So how does someone become a US citizen? The process is called naturalization. It's how people born in other countries become Americans. There are a few main steps: living legally in the US for at least 5 years, speaking basic English, and passing a test about US history and government. Finally, one has to take an oath of allegiance to the United States. Once you are a naturalized citizen, you have the same rights as anyone born in the US. Most people become citizens because they have family in the US or because of their jobs. Trump has repeatedly stated that he wants to restrict legal immigration in the US. He is also expected to reduce or eliminate the H-2A and H-2B visa programs, as well as the diversity immigrant visa program. H-2A visas are for temporary agricultural workers, while H-2B visas are for seasonal non-agricultural workers. The debate over H-1B visa escalated after Trump's supporters criticized the appointment of Indian-American entrepreneur Sriram Krishnan as a senior policy advisor for artificial intelligence. Now, Tesla CEO Elon Musk, who is Trump's choice to lead the Department of Government Efficiency, has been a vocal advocate for the H-1B program. Musk, who immigrated to the US from South Africa on an H-1B visa, has publicly supported the program. He believes it is important for the US to attract top talent and that the program can be improved to better benefit the economy. Trump 2.0 era begins. One thing is clear: the future of H-1B visa holders hangs in the balance. Will Indian techies continue to thrive in the US, or will Trump's policies force them to rethink the American dream?
1, 0.
The countdown ahead of a historic liftoff. And then a perfect hug in space. all done with clockwork precision. Two historic milestones for India's space sector, separated by 17 days. In these 17 days, from its launch to the successful spacecraft docking, India's SpaDex mission created history.
Now we can declare that the SpaDex docking has been achieved successfully.
But the mission took much more time than these 17 days. India's SpaDex, or space docking experiment, was 5 years in the making after getting an official nod in 2016. On 30th December 2024, India launched 2 satellites on ISRO's workhorse PSLV C-60 rocket. And then came a few hiccups. On 6th January 2025, ISRO postponed docking in space from 7th to 9th January after identifying an abort scenario. More simulations were carried out on the ground to improve the accuracy of docking. Then on 8th January, ISRO postponed the 9th January docking too after the satellites drifted more than anticipated during a maneuver to reduce the distance to 225 meters on the previous day. After this, the satellites drifted nearly 5 kilometers apart and maneuvers to bring them closer were restarted. Then on 12th January, a trial and data analysis was held. The satellites were brought closer together, and this time they reached the hold point of 3 meters before being moved away to a safe distance. And then came the big day, 16th January, the day the docking was done successfully. ISRO's SpaDex mission consisted of 2 relatively small spacecraft, Target and Chaser. Each weighed about 220 kilograms and were launched together into space. They were injected with slightly different force to allow them to attain a separation of about 20 kilometers while keeping them in the same orbit around Earth, about 470 kilometers from the surface. Then, as you know, the satellites were brought progressively closer in stages before being docked together. After the docking, ISRO showed another crucial capability, this time by controlling the joint satellites as a single unit. But the mission is not over yet. There is more to go. The next phase of the mission involves undocking maneuvers and power transfer tests between the satellites. So the satellites, which carry several scientific payloads, will eventually be undocked to carry out the scientific objectives over the next 2 years. India's SpaDex mission has gone down as one of the most historic moments in its space journey. With this mission, India launched itself into the elite club of space-faring giants: the United States, Russia, China, and now India. Just imagine the distance India's space sector has covered over the decades. When the erstwhile Soviet Union and US were racing to the moon and building their space empires, when the Americans were sending astronauts to walk on the moon and the Soviets were showcasing their space stations, India was transporting satellite parts on cycles and bullock carts and waiting in queue to use second-hand equipment from these powerful nations. The world has watched America and Russia rule the space for decades, but now it is India's turn to lead. With this mission, there is no looking back for India. So why is a successful space docking experiment such a big deal? Docking refers to the joining together of 2 or more fast-moving objects in space. This is a complex maneuver that requires great precision and advanced scientific capabilities. That's because satellites in space move at very high speeds. For docking to happen, they have to move at exactly the same speed, so that relative to each other, they are almost stationary. The smallest of errors can lead to complete destruction of satellites. The docking capability is necessary for carrying out missions that require heavy spacecraft that a single launch vehicle may not be able to lift into space in one go. Most large space assets, particularly those that involve two-way journeys from and to Earth, are made of several parts that are taken one at a time and then integrated in space. For instance, docking capability is essential to set up a space station for which separate modules are joined in space. Docking is also essential to transport crew and supplies to it. The size of the International Space Station, or ISS, can be imagined to be as big as a typical 6-bedroom house in the United States. It cannot be launched into space at one go. The ISS has various modules that were launched separately and were then brought together in space. It is kept running as modules carrying astronauts and supplies from Earth periodically dock with it. These modules also bring older crew back to Earth. Similarly, spacecraft taking humans to the moon have multiple components. A part of the spacecraft has to detach and then land on the moon and then integrate on the return journey. So docking is a critical step towards achieving several future goals, from bringing back a lunar sample to setting up a space station and sending a human to the moon. Now, as you know, India is only the 4th country after the United States, Russia and China to demonstrate this capability. Let's see when and how the other 3 countries did it. The United States. As the US and the erstwhile Soviet Union competed to send humans to the moon, it was essential to demonstrate rendezvous and docking. So in 1966, NASA's Gemini 8 became the first spacecraft to dock with the target vehicle, Agena. Gemini 8 was a crewed mission orbiting the Earth. It was commanded by Neil Armstrong, who in 1969 became the first human to set foot on the moon. In 1967, the USSR demonstrated the first uncrewed automated docking of the Cosmos 186 and Cosmos 188 spacecraft. In 2011, China demonstrated its docking capability when the unmanned Shenzhou 8 spacecraft docked with the Tiangong-1 space laboratory. A year later, China demonstrated its first crewed space docking when its astronauts manually joined its Shenzhou 9 spacecraft to the same space laboratory. So what's the purpose of India's SpaDex mission? ISRO has a vision of setting up a space station by 2035 and of sending a human to the moon by 2040. It has been working on key technologies to realize this vision. Besides a new heavy liftoff vehicle capable of carrying up to 30 tons to low Earth orbit, these missions would require docking capability. The Bharatiya Antariksh Station, or India's space station, will be built by bringing together 5 modules in space. The first of these robotic modules is slated to be launched in 2028. Docking capability will also be required for the next lunar mission, Chandrayaan-4, which will bring back samples from the moon. It will see 5 key modules being sent into orbit in 2 launches. A human mission to the moon is likely to follow a similar plan. So the significance of this technology cannot be overstated. It is essential for future space station operations, satellite servicing, and deep space missions. And so it opens up new possibilities for India's future space endeavors. ISRO's automated docking capabilities mean that 2025 has started on a triumphant note for India's space sector, from preparation for its human space flight Gaganyaan to Earth observation and navigation systems, from government programs to private sector initiatives. India stands ready to write new chapters in its space story, one mission at a time. A successful SpaDex mission redefines India's position in the global space community and sets the stage for even more ambitious projects. That's all in this edition of Connecting the Dots. We'll see you in the next episode with more raging issues. Until then, it's a goodbye from all of us in the Delhi newsroom. This is Munmun Bhattacharya signing off. Take care and stay safe.